Today on the DML News podcast, the big, huge immunity case goes in front of the Supreme Court, but Trump can't be there. He's going to be stuck in New York City one more time. Arizona goes after all things MAGA. Plus, we've got so much about these Palestinian wackos destroying America and destroying campuses. We've got videos that are going to just blow your mind. We've got surveillance showing China helping Russia. Ukraine is opening up more bars and nightclubs with your money than you could even start to imagine. The list is long. Drag queens in school. My God, what a show we've got. Hold on, because today it is absolutely all
unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. Back in the saddle across the way there is Denny, looking good as always. Like the new haircut, by the way. Sitting back behind the controls, who did a really good job yesterday in the show. That's Ryan. He stepped in and did both the controls and the commentary. But today we're back as a trio, and we've got a show for you. Believe me when I tell you. Just a real quick something. DMLCBD.com/gum, G-U-M, DMLCBD.com/gum. Buy one, get one free on the gummies. It's the leftover stuff that we had from our big BOGO the other day. All fresh new gummies, only about a couple of weeks old. They last for 2 years. It's unbelievable. Buy one, get one free. It'll probably last for about 2 days based on what we have left. So get in there and get in there now. All right, Dennis. So let's paint the picture. Donald J. Trump is sitting in a courtroom having to hear how the National Enquirer did what's called a catch and kill on the Stormy Daniels stuff. No big deal. No crime there. Happens all the time. Has happened for God knows how many years, 100 years, okay? Trump is sitting there listening to that BS. Meanwhile, his other set of lawyers are making, arguments, if you will, are sitting there with the Supreme Court today about whether or not Trump should have immunity from what took place on January 6th. Trump asks, can I go to that? It's a major, huge thing. And this judge says, we only let this court shut down for when somebody has a toothache. If you have a toothache, we're going to let this court stop. You can go to the dentist. But if you're fighting for your life in the middle of a presidential campaign and you're the guy who's leading in the polls, we don't want you to lead in the polls. We want you to be screwed, and no, you can't go to your immunity case. Now, this immunity case is a very interesting case in of itself, Dennis. The argument is, and this may change the presidency for forever and ever. The argument is that a president cannot be held criminally for anything that he or she does while they're in office. I mean, this would go as far as saying that if I were the president and I killed and I assassinated one of my political opponents, that I would be free and easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very big case. It bums me out big time that Trump's not even there to be present for it, that he's kind of being withheld into New York. I know the proceedings start today, this morning, but to your point, this could have very, very giant ramifications for how the presidency is viewed going forward. And, while I would like this to be helpful in the case of Trump, it could be nefarious for future presidents that are maybe doing harm to the country, such as one that's currently in office, Mr. Joe Biden.
Well, I'll tell you, yeah, right, because of all the things that Joe Biden has done. I mean, take a look at it. What he has done at the border, and we're going to get to a poll about the border in a second. What he's done at the border, as far as I'm concerned, is treasonous. Mm-hmm. He knowingly is allowing terrorists, people who are on the terror watch list, to enter this country. People who are taking in fentanyl, who are killing over 100,000 Americans, are being allowed to take it in under Joe Biden's watch. This would mean that if we tried to go get Joe Biden later on, we wouldn't be able to get it. We wouldn't be able to get him. He would be free and easy. I mean, I want to read this out of Axios, because Axios is a far left, news outfit. And I think this is one time that I sort of align with what they're saying. There's more on the line on Thursday at the Supreme Court than in any other court date former President Trump has had. For him, for the office, the office of the presidency, and most of all, for the court itself. The court's ultimate decision has the power to make or break Trump and the court as an institution. The court is set to hear oral arguments beginning at 10 a.m. over Trump's claim that he is immune from prosecution for his role in January 6th. Now, that is where I do not agree. He didn't have a role in January 6th.
No.
He gave a speech. Then he went back to the White House. He told people to go and protest peacefully. He did not have a role. And then later on, when the calls were for him to go on television and go on the internet and go on Twitter and tell people, hey, man, no violence, he did that. So they're just trying to make guilty by association here, right? I mean, it's not even like what Biden has done at the border. It's not like what Biden has done with sending our assets to Ukraine. So this way they could open up nightclubs. You'll see that soon. This is a man who gave a speech and told people to be, polite.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best way you could probably say it.
Right.
Okay. And that every president is immune from prosecution for any actions they took while in office. It's one of the most sweeping theories of presidential power ever articulated. In an earlier phase of the case, Trump's lawyers argued that a president couldn't be prosecuted even if they had a political rival assassinated. The stakes for Trump are enormous, and yet the stakes for the court are even higher. Even beyond the legal questions involved, the court is almost on trial itself, Supreme Court scholar Greer Stephenson told the Wall Street Journal. A ruling shielding Trump from prosecution handed down by a court on which he appointed 1/3 of the justices could decimate what's left of the court's image as an institution that's above politics. You know what? I'm just going to go on real quick here. There simply isn't very much precedent about how presidents interact with the civil and criminal justice systems. Most of it stems from a small handful of cases involving former presidents Nixon and Clinton. Whatever the court decides here will shape the presidency forever. Trump's lawyers have pursued the same initial strategy in all of his court proceedings, trying to delay things. So here's a very, very, very important thing to look at. What the left here is making an argument on is that for the first time in its history, the Supreme Court is in question. Do we really need a Supreme Court? Is the Supreme Court a just body? And the reason why they're saying that is because Trump has 1/3 of the people that are on that court were appointed by him. If you rip out Trump and put in Reagan, you rip out Trump and put in Clinton, you rip out Clinton, put in Obama or Bush or whoever it may be, Abraham Lincoln, they wouldn't be saying something like that. They're saying it because it's Trump. Trump put in 3 justices, and now that's the problem we have. And so what they're trying to say here is if they say that Trump is indeed immune from January 6th, that is going to dilute the meaning of the court forever and ever. In other words, the left is convicting Trump before he's even had his day in court.
It's crazy. And, I do find that very fascinating that this case is being decided when, a good amount of those justices were appointed by Trump, right? I mean, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I never even viewed it until we just started talking about it now. I always knew it was going to be a very detrimental case to what decides on Trump's fate, but this is really a test of the courts too.
Yeah, at the same time, is keep in mind that Kavanaugh and Barrett have both put down, as far as Gorsuch, I think, is the best out of all 3 so far based on his voting history. There have been things in immigration that these guys have done. Kavanaugh has done. I mean, they voted on things. I'm like, really? You guys are conservative? How the hell are you coming away with saying that that's a conservative way? So the court, as far as I'm concerned, has proven that it is not pro-Trump. It may have been placed by Trump by a third, but it is pro-America. And I don't agree with everything that this court has come down with by any measure. But the part of what I'm saying here about with Axios and the left, I agree in the sense that this decision is going to change everything about the presidency, because if it says that you're not immune from what you do in office. Presidents will watch themselves a little closer. If they say that you are immune, and to Trump's legal team's credit, this means that basically I could go shoot my opponent and I'm not going to be held accountable. If they say that that is indeed true, I think we lose what should be the fairness of the presidency, and it becomes more of a kingship.
Yeah.
It's very scary.
It's a very scary idea.
And that's why I agree with what Axios is saying, that it could set a precedent that will change not only the presidency, but change America forever. Mm-hmm. Now, with that being said, keep in mind that we have a guy right now in office who is acting as president. I don't think he really is the president. I think Barack Obama is the president. We got a guy who can't even speak, Dennis. We're going to play a short little video of where Biden is so scripted that he uses the word pause. When you're reading off a teleprompter, in case anybody hasn't done that before, basically what happens is that you have, like when on television, I used to have to read off a prompter all the time with your guests and stuff of that nature. So what it will say is it will say, introduce guest, ... But it will be in parentheses. So this way I know I'm not to say that. And then it will say, I'm in, Rudy Giuliani, former governor of New York City. I'm not supposed to say introduce guest. But if I'm so caught up in just being scripted on the teleprompter, I'm going to read that and make myself look like an ass. Mm-hmm. Here is Joe Biden making himself, once again, on a daily basis, looking like an ass. Play it, Ryan.
Imagine what we can do next. 4 more years. Pause. 4 more years. Pause. 4 more years. 4 more years.
Now, Dennis, one more video to show that Joe Biden is an absolute loser. If you are a Catholic, you do not believe in abortion. It's basically, everybody has the right to life. Joe Biden plays himself off as a Catholic, and yet I don't know how he does that, because he's championing for the abortion issue. He always does. He always has. So any one of these Democrats who support that sort of thing clearly is hypocritical to their faith. With that in mind, the most grotesque thing you can do as a Catholic is sit there and push for abortion, and at the same time, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's what Joe Biden does. Play the video.
And then we come back here to the state of Florida, where Ron DeSantis felt like he needed to run for president, and so 15 weeks wasn't good enough. We had to go to 6 weeks. And then we come back here to the state of Florida, where Ron DeSantis felt like he needed to run for president, and so 15 weeks wasn't good enough. We had to go to 6 weeks.
You look at the economy, you look at the border, you look at what we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes with Ukraine. You talk about the falling of our school system. Later in the show, we're going to be going back to drag queen crap and listening to what it is that they're doing to little kids. You look at the assault on police, the lack of respect that has happened in this country. Everything's running wild, Dennis. I can't understand how anybody would vote for Joe Biden. In fact, we're going to show a video on the other side when we just go to Team DML, because I can't play it on Facebook, YouTube, or Apple, showing a black woman who is voting for Biden, chanting Biden 2024. If you are a Biden voter, this is who you align with. There is a theory going on right now, again from the left, that polling is showing that RFK, Robert Kennedy, that he is going to be detrimental to Trump, not to Biden, if indeed those 3 men are all the candidates running. So why don't you give us what some of these polls are saying?
Yeah, I mean, this is mainly the Quinnipiac poll, but like you said, points out RFK. President Biden says his polling numbers are moving in the right direction. They look even better when the latest results for RFK Jr. are factored in. Biden and Trump are tied 46 to 46% in the latest Quinnipiac national poll. If you throw RFK in the mix, and it's still tied 37%, but force RFK voters to choose, and they break 47% to 29% for Trump. The dynamic is consistent with two other polls, a Marist survey on Monday and a NBC News one on Sunday, that show Biden's margin increasing when RFK and other third-party candidates are included.
So here's what they're trying to sell. So right now, based on that Quinnipiac poll, Joe Biden and Donald J. Trump are neck and neck. And what they say is, if you throw RFK in there, they basically still remain neck and neck. But when you take an RFK voter and you say, you don't have RFK, he's not going to be on the ballot, let's say, you got to take a choice. They're choosing Trump. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah.
So what they're trying to say is that because RFK is in the game, he's pulling from Trump. You follow? Which is just absolutely insane to think that Biden wins in that way. But that's the way the left tries to spin this crap.
And look, here's the important thing I don't think we're mentioning yet. This doesn't necessarily actually translate to votes. Because for one thing with that, I had done this in my briefing this morning. I juxtapose, how they do those polls, especially Quinnipiac. They've always had the favoritism towards Biden in their monthly polls, and now it's starting to be a little more on that slim margin. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you have a union worker did an interview with Fox News. 3 in 1 of his members are going for Trump compared to Biden. And I did a poll about actual enthusiasm to go out and vote. So it's one thing to say, do you like Biden or do you like Trump? It's like, well, I guess I like Biden because he's the Democrat. But are you actually enthused to go vote for him if you've been, let's say you're a far lefty and you're already disappointed on him because of the whole Israel-Palestine thing? It's one of the few things where, it hurts him on the left. Or you're someone who maybe is a Democrat suburban woman, but you realize, my gosh, my grocery prices continue to go up, 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 up. I may stay a Democrat, but how enthused I am to vote for Biden when the man can't even read a teleprompter correctly and he's doing nothing to correct inflation. So when you look at the enthusiasm poll, it is skyrocket high for Trump in comparison to Biden. So my hope is that this is more of just media narrative trying to say that there's some growing support for Biden. But if we're assuming everything's going to be natural, who's actually going to be enthusiastic to go out there and cast their ballot?
I would tend to agree with you in elections past, and I mean pre-COVID. Because if November can be a brutal month, even though it's early on in the November process, but it could be a brutal month for weather. And there are a lot of states that are Democrat states, especially in New England, that would maybe have bad weather, cold weather, snow, sleet, rain, you name it. And if you were just allowed to vote on that given Tuesday, I can see somebody who wasn't enthused and said, you know what, man, Biden has no chance anyway. Screw it. Let's just, I'm not going out. It's snowing. It's 6 inches. It's whatever it may be. I would align with you on that one and say that the enthusiasm part plays a big key. The part that gets me nervous about that is that we don't play by those rules anymore. It's now the COVID elections. And so people have the ability to send in a ballot. They don't have to show any ID, nothing. I mean, it's so loosey-goosey. We've now got millions of illegal aliens who, as we've shown on this show, are being encouraged by NGOs to vote for Biden this year. And so the illegal alien who doesn't know any better thinks that, I'm being invited in here. Not only do they want me to work, but they want me to vote. So and I know, I would bet my entire life that illegal aliens are going to vote in this next election. It may not be as widespread as the Democrats would hope it would be, or that we fear it would be, but it is going to happen. So when you take the balloting, you take the early voting, you take the shenanigans that the left play with, dragging people out of their house and saying, hey, I'll pay you to go do whatever it is you want to do. You take the things that you saw in 2,000 Mules from Dinesh D'Souza, you add it all up. I don't know if enthusiasm is the catalyst that it once was pre-COVID. I think now it's more of the operatives. Are the operatives spending the money and getting the soldiers out there to get those people who are not enthusiastic to go out and vote one way or another, because it's so easy to vote now.
Yeah, you might be right. And that's the thing, because if it was based on enthusiasm, even visually, you take Biden with his very artificial, fabricated campaign stops that are just almost cringe to watch. And then you look at Trump in New York and still drawing in crowds. I mean, this is supposed to be the big blue state. And yet, when he's there at that bodega, it's like, it's just such a natural feel. All his rallies have that natural feel. So it just makes you almost depressed knowing that, like, they're trying to make this poll narrative of like, oh, Biden's gaining with what? Like the people behind him with the signs that are told 10 minutes beforehand to look happy. It's a shame that that's the process now.
Well, even this morning, I mean, I should have given this video. I forgot to send it off to you guys. But this morning when I was reading, I was up early this morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock. I mean, there was stuff that going through Twitter already that before Trump even, Trump is notoriously an early riser, and late to bed, early to rise. That's really what his whole thing is. And it's amazing how that man could operate on no sleep. But regardless, he was out there campaigning today, stopping off at construction sites, and people are just going, they're going crazy for him. They love it. And he believes that he's going to be able to shift New York. I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to shift New York. Between the amount of crime and the taxes and all the just crazy regulations that are happening in New York, I can see where New York would say, you know what, I'm tired of this. I don't care. The Democrat Party isn't the Democratic Party as it used to be. One of the things that's going to play a major role this year in many, many liberal cities is going to be the illegal immigration problem that Joe Biden has created. And so there is a new poll out as well that says that Americans and Democrats are warming up to mass deportation. What are the numbers on that, Dennis?
Yeah, so it says share of Americans who say they support mass deportations of Axios uses undocumented immigrants, it's illegal aliens. Right. So when they polled, I think it was around 7,000 people, general public consensus, 51% support it. When you break it down by race, 56% of white pollsters support it, 45% of Latinos, which is almost half, and 40% of black. Political affiliation, Republican, you got a whopping 68% there. Independent, 46%, and even Democrat, 42%. Then when you look down by generation, Boomer Plus is at 60%, Gen X is at 53%, Millennials at 48%, and then the lowest is Gen Z at 35%.
So nonetheless, I mean, Gen Z, it's they have no idea what they're talking about. They're in the streets marching for Palestine. But when you look at this, it has historically been that the Republicans will be for deportation, and the blue team is going to tell you, oh, these people are just here for the better life. But when you see cities like Denver and New York City and Chicago, who already have their problems, now watch their problems go on steroids. They're extrapolated at a level that nobody ever thought they'd be at. People are losing their jobs. They're losing their police departments. They're losing their funding for parks that we've seen it before. Little black kids in Massachusetts. Hey, this is the park where I come from my YMCA. This is where I come. So this way I'm not doing drugs on the corner. I'm playing basketball. You're taking this away from me for illegal aliens. So now you're starting to see the tide is turning. We want these people gone. That works to Trump's advantage because he's going to be the king of mass deportation, or at least he promises.
Yeah, and just another stat you might find interesting here. 30% of the Democrats polled, as well as 46% of Republicans, now say they'd end birthright citizenship, which has been under the 14th Amendment for decades. But
well, look, when you look at the way that the 14th Amendment was written, it was written with the intent of actually helping the slaves. So this way their children would be, U.S. citizens without any question. The left has interpreted that as Juanita from El Salvador can come over the border, drop a kid, and that's a U.S. citizen. As if in the founding fathers thought, oh, well, we're going to have open borders, so we might as well just make it easy for Latin America just to become American citizens. Clearly, that wasn't the case. The Republicans have allowed that to become the interpretation, and now trying to, undo that genie after it's way out of the bottle. So yeah, in order to be able to change that, you would have to there would have to be a constitutional amendment, which is like moving a mountain with, I don't know, like a sand shovel. Okay. It's almost impossible to do. So we would need a massive change in terms of interpretation. If we did that, I'm telling you, there would be a lot less people coming into this country. Keep in mind right now that it's somewhere around $50,000 to give a birth. So every time Juanita comes in and plops a baby, she's putting a $50,000 burden on a hospital because it's not getting paid. And then therefore that unpaid claim goes to the state, goes to the taxpayers. And eventually what ends up happening, these hospitals close, or they say, we don't have a maternity ward anymore. We can't deliver babies, go somewhere else.
Right.
Because they realize the fact that they're going to wind up being put out of business simply because of that. Now, with this being said, you speak about the border. I'm going to go to a border state. We're going to shift gears here for a minute. Major news out of Arizona yesterday. An Arizona grand jury has indicted 18 allies of Donald Trump for their efforts to subvert the 2020 election, including former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and attorneys Rudy Giuliani and Boris Epstein. The indictment, which includes felony counts of conspiracy, fraud, and forgery, also describes Trump as an unindicted co-conspirator. Defendants and unindicted co-conspirators schemed to prevent the lawful transfer of the presidency to keep unindicted co-conspirator one in office, which obviously is Trump, against the will of Arizona's voters. It's a 58-page indictment. We have a video here from the woman who actually led the way. Ryan, why don't you play that video?
Hi, I'm Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays. Let me start by thanking everyone for your patience as we conducted a thorough and professional investigation over the past 13 months into the fake elector scheme in our state. I understand for some of you today didn't come fast enough, and I know I'll be criticized by others for conducting this investigation at all. But as I have stated before and will say here again today, I will not allow American democracy to be undermined. It's too important. The investigators and attorneys assigned to this case took the necessary time to thoroughly piece together the details of the events that began nearly 4 years ago. They followed the facts where they led, and I'm very proud of the work they've done to date. We're here because justice demands an answer to the efforts that the defendants and other unindicted co-conspirators allegedly took to undermine the will of Arizona's voters during the 2020 presidential election. Arizona's election was free and fair. The people of Arizona elected President Biden. Unwilling to accept this fact, the defendants charged by the state grand jury allegedly schemed to prevent the lawful transfer of the presidency. Whatever their reasoning was, the plot to violate the law must be answered for, and I was elected to uphold the law of this state. The scheme, had it succeeded, would have deprived Arizona's voters of their right to have their votes counted for their chosen president. It effectively would have made their right to vote meaningless.
You know, Dennis, this is a topic that we could have a 4-hour conversation on.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people on this program, especially going back a couple of years ago. I had State Senator Karen, the hell's her last name? I can't remember her last name. She spearheaded the audit for the Republicans. I've had another guy on here who is a election expert. He testified in those hearings. And when I hear dead people voting, ballots that were not folded, paper that was not supposed to be used, that was used, empty boxes of votes suddenly coming out in the middle of the night, servers being accessed in the middle of the night, and then when being asked for them, Democrats will not hand over the server logs that would show IP addresses of where that's coming in from. When I hear the long list of, wait a second, there's 100 people voting out of the same household, right? When I hear those kind of things over and over and over and over, and I hear this woman get up there and say that the investigation was thorough and fair, it's not true. I'd love to, Karen Fann, that was her name. I'd love to have Karen Fann sit there and say, here is the pile of evidence that we have, that we've handed over to the Attorney General, who never did anything with it. Now you're the new Attorney General. Why don't we take a look at this? Why don't we go through this thoroughly? Why don't we go through this fairly? Because they wouldn't do it. So the Republicans went through the course of having an audit, but they had all their findings. They hand them over. The state of Arizona does nothing with it. They ask for receipts. They ask for things that they need, like the server logs, and they're told no. So how does anybody have the audacity to sit up there and say to people on a video that, yeah, you're going to be criticized, but this was a thorough and justified process that we had to go through. So this way the votes really counted. I am so tired of the left having their free and open conversation about the big lie. And that if anybody brings up the counter argument to that, you are either shut down. I mean, if you question the election on YouTube, your video will be removed. Facebook, sort of, kind of. You do that on Twitter, the old Twitter, you were removed. You were shadow banned. So why is it that they're allowed to talk about it all the time because they're going to say how true it was and they're going to go through all these investigations and everything? But if our side says, wait, we have some questions, it doesn't make sense. Well, can we just see the server logs? Because I know what a server log is. Server log tells me who came in, who came out, when they came in, when they came out, and where they came from. And and I know if that IP address reads some freaking North Korea or Indonesia, because what they do is they cover over those IP addresses. They put a masking on it. That's what the case was.
Right.
Or if it came from the Democrat Party, and you could follow it back to a Democrat Party, why are you hitting the server at 3 o'clock in the morning? Nobody's supposed to hit the server. It's not supposed to be connected to the internet. Yet it was connected to the internet, and we'd like to see the server logs, and you're told no.
Yeah. There's clearly a breadcrumb trail. The annoying part is that we have this abuse of power where the gates are put up before you can follow the trail to the source. And you have this lady here, and if you're watching on the podcast, you can almost just see like the dystopian look in her eyes that, obviously Trump is constantly targeted, but it really does now spread to anyone that's on his team, because they had the names redacted in the indictments, but when you start seeing the descriptions of who they are, like confirming that Rudy Giuliani's among them, I think Jenna Ellis was in there as well. It becomes hard to fight for him when you know that you're going to be targeted too.
That's why they do it.
Yeah.
That's why they do it. So why are they going after Rudy Giuliani? Why are they destroying his life? Why are they now going after Mark Meadows? Why are they going after Carrie Lake? Why do they go after these people? Because these people have always shown a big, huge spine and backbone in protecting Trump and the idea of make America great again. And so what they're trying to do is say, if you become one of these people, you want to become an advocate? Understand that we're going to rip you down. We're going to destroy your life. It's going to cost you $1 gazillion in legal fees. You may not go to jail, but you're going to be piss poor.
Yeah, it's just going to always become your focus, dealing with indictment after indictment.
That's what Rudy Giuliani's life is right now.
I know.
That's what his life is.
Yeah.
Now let me ask people who are listening, because I know anybody who's listening to this program is an intelligent person, right? Russia collusion and the Steele dossier. Remember that? New York Times actually got a Pulitzer Prize for that investigation. You were told about it over and over and over. All these liberals up on Congress, up on the steps of the Capitol, all telling us about Russia collusion, Russian collusion, Russia collusion. What did it turn out to be? It turned out to be a huge, big lie. Fast and Furious, where the Obama administration ran guns to the cartels, and where Eric Holder, the AG, actually was held in contempt of Congress because he would not hand over documentation. He would not hand over information to Congress that he knew would wind up showing that they did what they did. Okay? All became a big, huge lie. What they said Fast and Furious was to where it was. The truth about it. Benghazi. We were told by the media, we were told by the White House, we were told by members of Congress that Benghazi was an act of violence because it was a retaliation against a video that was on YouTube about Allah. Turned out to be absolutely untrue.
Mhm.
Okay. COVID. You were told that it didn't come from Wuhan. You were told that there was no gain of function by Fauci, any kind of money supplied to that. You were told that if you took the shot, you would not get sick. How many times were we told things about COVID that turned out to be an absolute, utter lie? This happens all the time. Even the jobs numbers. You're told the jobs numbers are what they are, and then you wind up hearing 2 months later that they had to repeal back the numbers that they weren't right. Well, you know what? The cat's already out of the bag, man. People already have those numbers in their head. It's already been reported that way. Nobody's listening to the retraction.
Yeah.
Nobody. Or they give you the jobs numbers, but they don't tell you that if you peel back layer number 1, you see that it's all new jobs to illegal aliens. We are lied to constantly all the time. But in this one particular case, Dennis, this one election where some guy who was out of his freaking basement, who couldn't even win first, second, or third place in Iowa or New Hampshire in the primaries, nobody went to a single rally. This guy grabbed 81 million votes? Can we look into this a little bit further? No, that's the big lie. So you know what? If it smells like a rat and it gnaws like a rat and it makes noise like a rat, it's a rat. That's why the fact that they push this so hard makes me believe that they're covering something up. It only makes me believe more that this is why this election turned out the way it was, because I believe that there was shenanigans left and right in the same way that what they're doing this time, Dennis, instead of trying to rig an election, this time what they're trying to do is throw the guy in jail.
Yeah. No. Well, is thrown in jail and then he's released and is a felon. Apparently in North Carolina, you can vote in those elections now if you are a felon.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the next story we have here. Unbelievable. An Obama-appointed judge,
yes,
right, in North Carolina just said, what can be done now for this election?
Yes, so she's an Obama appointee. Judge Loretta Biggs just ruled that North Carolina must allow felons to vote in their elections. North Carolina has a law in the books that prevents felons from voting. The judge just determined that the law is discriminatory, primarily against black voters in North Carolina.
So let's take a look at something, right? So we did a report going back about 3 or 4 weeks ago that North Carolina was a big state for Obama.
Yes.
North Carolina was, I think it was a pretty good state for Biden as well. But now Trump is leading in North Carolina in a lot of polls, and that could flip to him. They see this, they know this, and now what do? They reach out to the Obama-appointed judge and say, you know what we need? We need felons to vote. We need every vote we possibly can. And so what's going to wind up happening? You got a disproportionate amount of blacks in the prisons, and blacks always vote Democrat for some stupid reason. They just always do it. And so here you go. They're going to try to pull out every trick they can to try to keep it so this way Donald J. Trump does not get his day in the sun. That's basically what it is. They will do anything, Dennis.
It's crazy. I mean, look, the whole concept, right, is that if you're a felon and you committed a freaking egregious crime, you should not have a say or vote in our elections. And now they're going to, allow them to vote under the guise of it's discrimination or racial discrimination for not allowing them to vote. It's just, it really is becoming just these liberal covers.
I know if you speak to a liberal, they're going to tell you the most important thing right now in the country, like one of the biggest, huge pending problems in the country right now is making sure that everybody uses the right pronouns. And that if you don't use the right pronouns for somebody who identifies as a cat, if you don't call them meow, that, you could be held responsible. It's a big problem in the United States, this kind of thing. Big problem. And of course, if it's not that, then of course it's going to be climate change, right? Well, I'll tell you what we have a bigger problem with. There's this thing called China, and this other thing called Russia, and this other thing called Iran. And they are helping each other to empower each other to become bigger, stronger, faster, with the ultimate goal of taking the United States out once and for all. So while we're all sitting here hearing about the importance of the tricolored flag and how important it is that, everybody gets called, she, her, them, they, China and Russia are playing games. Reuters, Ryan, you could throw up this picture. This is out of Reuters. China is providing moorage, meaning they're mooring a boat, for a U.S. sanctioned Russian cargo ship implicated in the North Korean arms transfers to Russia, according to satellite images obtained by Reuters, as U.S. concerns grow over Beijing's support for Moscow's war in Ukraine. British Royal United Services Institute think tank said the Russia vessel Angara, which since August 2023 has moved to Russian ports thousands of containers believed to contain North Korean munitions, has been anchored at a Chinese shipyard in eastern Zhejiang province since February. The ship's presence at the Chinese port underscores the challenges facing the United States and its allies as they try to choke off military and economic support for Russia. So here we are, passing a $95 billion garbage funding bill that Biden signed into law yesterday, $60 billion of it going to Ukraine, as if we're ever going to wind up winning this fight with Ukraine against Russia. And North Korea, who has nuclear arsenals at the touch, is now sending their munitions to Russia through proxy of China.
Right. Yes. Because if you need the layman's explanation, the only reason North Korea is even functioning is through the assistance and aid of China. And best way to put it, North Korea is never really going to make a true move unless they get China's approval. So you have North Korea, they're stockpiled with weapons. China went to the door and said, hey, we're going to take some of those and send them over to Russia because, they're advancing. They're going to take over those parts of Ukraine. There's nothing that is going to change. Hand over the weapons. So they hand over to China. China puts them to Russia. And yet we just go into this continuous cycle of handing more money to Ukraine, even though, as we'll note later on, that money is not actually going into the war. It's going into Kyiv, which is the capital city, going into nightclubs and fun and ridiculousness. That's not even what we initially intended to fund.
No reason to wait. We're going to show you a video right now out of CBS, by the way. CBS, right? CBS News is reporting that the billions of U.S. taxpayers have funneled into Ukraine have allowed the bar scene to flourish. There are now more bars and nightclubs in the capital than before the war began. So get ready for this, because you're going to get really pissed off. You go to work, you make money, or your kids go to work, they make money, and they got to pay taxes, and you think it would go to somewhere like the U.S. southern border to where we could defend ourselves against the invasion that we get of the 300,000 people coming in here every single month? No, we're going to give it to Ukraine. Ukraine for what? What are we doing? What are we giving it to them? When you see the people of Ukraine partying and having fun and swiping down cocktails, remember, you paid for those cocktails. You paid for those cocktails, all right? So with that in mind, let me just say this. If you are watching on Facebook, YouTube, or listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of those other places, we cannot continue the rest of the show on those networks because the stuff we're going to show you, what we got coming up in terms of talking about Hamas, showing you videos of what's happening on these college campuses, showing you now about the drag queens going back into the schools doing double duty. Not only are they indoctrinating these kids and grooming these kids, but they're teaching them how to go pro-Palestine. Oh, yeah, no joke on that. We're going to show you a beating that took place on a bus, stuff that I can't put on those networks. So what do? Very simple. Download the DML News app from the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, absolutely for free. Then go to tab 5, the Interact tab. It will say Team DML memberships. Join Team DML. You get the full video, the full audio, if that's what you prefer, and you get it every single day, the full show, 100%. Plus, you're in our live chat, and there's so many other different things that we offer. As low as $2.50 a month, no ads, no nothing. Come on in, help us stay alive, so this way we can help you, we can help Trump, we can do our part. Please come on over and be part of Team DML. We're going to play this nightclub video. And for those of you who are Team DML, we'll commentary on that. We'll give you comments on that right after the video. For those of you who aren't with us, well, enjoy the rest of your day, and God willing, we'll be with you tomorrow. Ryan, play the party in Ukraine.
Despite the rockets, Ukraine's nightlife is rocking. The bars and clubs are full. The place is jumping, music pumping, drinks flow freely, and they dance like there's no tomorrow. And it's not just here. Fun fact, there are now more bars and restaurants in the capital than before the start of the invasion.
Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DMail News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and team DMail.